too?
No, go ahead.
Hey, yo, Paulo, is he taking? Fine, you can go. Hey, girl.
Hey boys, seat taking?
Nah, go ahead, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, you good.
What are you reading?
Let's see, I'm reading a great book, eh? And who are you?
Hey, boy, sitting here.
You know what? Go ahead.
Thank you. I had a cold.
Go ahead.
Oh, we all got books out? Which book are you reading?
Me?
Yeah, what'd you choose?
Oh, yeah. I'm reading The Color of Magic by Terry Pratchett. And I chose this book because once I read the back, and I saw that there was that the world was 4 elephants standing on a giant turtle, had to read it, right?
4 elephants.
4 elephants.
How many pages are there?
Right, 277, you know, something like
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
What are you reading?
Oh, bro, I'm reading The Things They Carry by Tim O'Brien. Bro, I chose it because I was in humanities one day and I forgot my SSR book. And my teacher, Miss D, she was like, here, you could borrow this book. And I was like,
What a nice
thanks. So I read it.
What a nice teacher.
You know what though? You know what though? What? Don't forget your book again. Give me your hand.
I know, I'm sorry. Alright, what book are you reading?
I'm reading Legend by Marie Lu. So I chose this book because, you know, I read this back in 8th grade and I really need an SSR book. This is the first book I found, so I thought I remembered most of the book, you know. So apparently it all worked out, so it's good. My book is like 305 pages though, so
That's not it, cheap.
and you know, it took a while, but you know, I got there. How about you, Jimmy? What'd you read?
I read Monster by Walter Dean Myers, and I chose this book because lately I've been watching a lot of documentaries and articles on people going on trial for things they haven't done and going on death row, and I thought it's a perfect book. It relates to it, and that's why I chose it. What about you, Paulo?
Oh, I read Ready Player One by Ernest Cline, and it has, wait for it, 374 pages.
Bro, get out of here with that, bro. You need a
I
new
don't know
book.
how I finished it.
You need a new book.
Bro, what?
You need a new book.
But yeah, I picked this book because when I went to the library, the librarian was all like, I asked her about a book that I could relate to, and she said, do you like playing video games? And I was like, of course. And then she was like, yeah, try this book. And then I really liked the book.
That's it.
Cole, what was like a brief summary of your book? So
tell
like,
us
I get,
about
Oh, so
I know what it is.
my book, so the things they carried, it was like stories, like weird stories. So each chapter is a different story, and like it's crazy because some stories are so crazy you don't believe it's true. Just like the theme of the story. That's what I think this theme of the story is. But so one of my favorite stories, it's told by Rat Kiley. His name's not really Rat, they call him Rat. His real name is Bob, so it's Bob Kiley. So he was telling the story of this guy named Mark Fossey. He was deported back home, and when he was sent back, he brought his wife with him, but nobody knew it was his wife. His wife's name was Mary Ann Bell. So she was so curious about war, she started joining into stuff. Like she was getting slowly into like creeping into these things. And one night, they like Mark Fossey wasn't sleeping next to her. Like she like got up and left, and he didn't know where. So like she was getting so close to other like people, and like he thought she was cheating. So he went around crazy, opening people's curtains, seeing if she was there. But it turns out she turned into a cold-hearted killer. So she went on missions without him. It's like,
Wow, that's hey, war changes you, man.
man,
War changes.
War
yes.
changes you, man.
It's kind of crazy because like people don't even believe that story. You know what I mean?
Alright, I'm interested on this 4 elephants and
That's
turtle.
what I wanted to know.
Yeah. What's up with these
Let me get y'all a brief
turtle
summary.
kinds?
So, The Color of Magic, right? It's about this disc world, and this world, you know, it's shaped like a disc. And this disc is sitting on 4 elephants, and these 4 elephants are standing on a turtle. And in this book, there's 2 main characters. One named is Rincewind, who's a wizard, and there's a guy named Twoflower, who's a tourist of this new world, right? Yeah. So, Twoflower comes to this world, and he's like seeking somebody to help him guide around, right? So he finds Rincewind, and at first Rincewind doesn't want to help him out, so Rincewind tries to make like a run for his life, and he's like trying to leave the planet, and then they catch him out at the border, and then they're like, you have 2 options: either I can kill you now, or you can help help this guy out, give him a tour of the world, and he's gonna die along the way. So this guy, he chose, he was like, alright, well, I still want to live, so he was like, I'm gonna die along the way, I guess. So he's guiding Tufar through this world, and they get into like lots of trouble, they end up going to prison and everything. And the thing about Rincewind being a wizard, right, he only knows one spell. And this one spell, like, it's really destructive, like, it can destroy everything. And he only thinks of it when he's like coming close to death. So there's like this one point where they're like in a prison, and it's him and Tufar, they're in a cell, and they're coming close to death. Like, it's either they stay there, or they can like break out and they can like fly into space, you know. And they choose to fly into space, right? And they end up not dying. They end up getting to a different planet, and in the end, Rincewind dies. But you know, pretty good book. You know, I liked it. 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10.
10 out of 10 out of 10. Repeat again.
Good, Jimmy. Alright, well, my book, Monster, the setting is in Harlem, New York, and it's about a young 16-year-old boy who is on trial for murder and robbing a drugstore. And the opposing side of that, and what Steve claims, is that he has nothing to do with the murder or the drugstore, and he doesn't even know the other people that were in on it, being James King and Bobo Evans. So he doesn't even know these people. It's kind of just he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And so basically, throughout the book, the only evidence that claims he was there is from Bobo Evans, James King, and another person that was involved are the only people that say he was in it. But witnesses and other civilians that were in the store say otherwise, and say that Steve was nowhere to be seen. And in the end, he ends up not being guilty, and
Damn.
that's much about it.
You say that he was a black man?
Oh yeah. Also, along with him going, he knows he did not do the crime, but he's just afraid and worried about the jury is going to be biased towards
So they're like racial
towards him,
profiling.
because he's a young black man.
That's
That's messed up, bro. This world crazy.
Man.
What's Ready Player One about, bro?
Okay, so my book, Ready Player One, it's about, it takes place in 2045, and it's in Columbus, Ohio, and it's about the world when everything's like on the brink of collapse, meaning like the world is overpopulated and everybody's unemployed. And then the only like hope for the people was a game made by James Halliday. The game was called The Oasis. It's where like anyone can be whoever they want. They can be like a cartoon, a scary person, anything that like they desire. They can like change their shape of their face, make them look like more handsome or beautiful.
Cool. That's cool.
And then so that's where like everybody goes. They go to school there, they go to work, that's where they gain money. So after like, the only thing you do in the real world was just eat and sleep. And then you wake up and you go back to the Oasis where you can do whatever you want. But then when the maker, James Halliday, passed away, he released a video to everybody in the Oasis, and that's like the whole world, because everybody plays it. And in the video he says that whoever finds the Easter eggs within his game, which is the 3 keys that unlock the gates, you'll get the whole game. He'll sign over the game to you, so you can either like destroy it or you can like do whatever you want with the game. And you get his fortune, which is like $500 billion.
Is it $500 billion?
Yeah.
Damn!
And then so this
I didn't
person,
put
the
that
main
in.
character, Wade Watts, and then his gamer name is Parzival. Him and his friends, they try to solve the Easter egg, right? And they're called Gungers. And then at the end of the book,
So Apollo, so you said that your book takes place in 2 different worlds, right?
yeah, it's like the reality and then the game world.
That's kind of like mine, but like this is not like a reality and like a virtual world, more like 2 different perspectives. But the book talks about it as if it's 2 different worlds. So
This book takes place in, they say the future, but it doesn't specify when in the future, but they say that this takes place when the United States isn't really the United States anymore. It's more split. So it takes place in Los Angeles, California, but it's, instead of it being the United States, it's called the Republic of America. So that's basically like the government over there. So the two worlds we're talking about, so there's one where there's a poor kid, his name is Day, he lives on the streets. And there's another character named June. She basically works for the government, and she's like the smartest kid out there. They're both 16 years old, but little do they know that their worlds are gonna collide. So when June's brother Matthias dies because of Day technically murders Matthias, but he doesn't do it intentionally. But when he murders Matthias, she makes it her personal mission to try to find who killed her brother. So she goes onto the streets to pretend she's one of the poor people. And she finds Day, but she doesn't realize it's him. But when she soon figures out that she's been like kind of living with her brother's murderer, she takes him in for questioning and kind of torture for all of his crimes that he's done. So, but then she soon to find out that when she's keeping Day in check, because she's kind of in charge of him, when she keeps him in check, she soon finds out that the government that she's been working for has been keeping a lot of secrets from their country. So she basically has to turn her back on everything she's lived for in order to figure out the truth of their country.
Yeah, that's freaking crazy.
It's crazy.
Dang.
Bro, like, did you have like anything that stood out to you, like a quote?
Oh, a quote? Well, hold on. Oh yeah, right. It's right here. So the quote is, in any war story, but especially a true one, it's difficult to separate what happened from what seemed to happen. So basically this relates to like the theme I said earlier, like war is so crazy that sometimes the crazier the story of war, the harder it is to believe, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that story of the cold-hearted woman, how she turned into a killer.
Mm-hmm.
That's like people in the army, they like can't believe it. And like that kind of compares to like people in the real army right now, because there's a lot of people homeless, you know what I mean? Like a lot of veterans who are homeless, and maybe it's because people think they're crazy, but it's probably like PTSD. Like they're so crazy, like with all these stories, nobody believes them. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's like how I can compare it, and that's like the theme, and it really stood out to me. Do you have a quote too?
Yeah. I got a quote. Page 245. A great way of escape, muttered Rincewind. From his perch halfway up the wall, you said it looks out over the edge. Just step out and plunge through space and maybe freeze solid or hit some other world at incredible speeds or plunge wildly into the burning heart of the sun. Worth a try, said Two Flower. So this quote reflects to my theme of exploration, because at the time, in that point of the book, they were in prison, and they had the option to either stay in prison or they could break out, and they decided to explore a new thing and break out, and like they had the chance of dying in space or like surviving and hitting a world, you know, that they don't know. So yeah, I think that was a pretty strong quote in my book, and yeah. So Jimmy, how about you? You got a quote?
Oh yeah, I got a quote. My quote is at the end of the book, and it is the last line. So let me read it. When Miss O'Brien looked at me after we had won the case, what did she see that caused her to turn away? What did she see? So let me set this up. Basically, earlier on in the book, as Steve won the case, he's happy and excited, and he looks at Miss O'Brien with hands up with joy and turns to her, but Miss O'Brien stiffens up and looks away and kind of denies his hug and his joy. And at the end of the book, it gives you kind of a cliffhanger and leaves you with that question, like why didn't she celebrate, and why did she do that? And but my theme that I have for the book is very different. My theme is that anything can happen to anybody at any time, because this is shown through the owner of the drugstore. He was going on with his life, doing his own thing, getting his life right, and he ends up getting murdered. And this also is shown by Steve, he had nothing to do with the case and the murder or the robbery, and he ends up going on trial, and he basically dodged the bullet.
That's some cliffhanger, my guy.
Yeah.
Cliffhanger,
Is there a second book?
I don't think so.
Oh, I'm not gonna know. I'm not gonna know.
You have a quote?
Oh yeah, I got a quote. I got you guys. So let's see. Find it first. Oh, right here. All right. So that's why I worry. Oh, Day's saying this, by the way. You know, the poor kid. All right. All right. That's why I worry about Eden, because even though he's easily the smartest of us three boys, he thinks a lot like I do. Even though Day hasn't actually talked to Eden in 5 years, he still worries about his little brother constantly. He keeps watch over his family because he feels like it's his responsibility. So I thought this quote was pretty cool, because even though he's living on the streets, there's a background to this where they think that his family thinks that he died, but he really didn't. So he's living on the streets, and his family doesn't know that he's alive, but he still keeps them in check. He tries to make sure that none of them are sick, none of them are trying to die, or not trying to die, none of them are dying. So I thought that was pretty cool, and I thought that relates to the theme of this book, which is family, because he really cares about his family, even though they might not even know he's alive, or even though that he has to go through all these things living on the streets, because he really cares for his family. I thought that was pretty cool. So yeah.
Family first.
Yeah. You got a quote, Paul?
Oh yeah, of course. So my quote comes after when Wade Watts beats the game, and he talks about Holiday's character comes in, right? And he says, "As terrifying and painful as reality can be, it's also the only place where you can find true happiness." So this quote, I think it relates to my theme, which is that there's different types of reality, right? So the different types of reality was the reality they thought was real, which was in the game, and what their actual reality is, which, like he said, that's the only place where you can find true happiness. And I feel like Halliday meant the game to for everybody to play, but not for that game to take over their lives. That's why when Wade won, he kind of regretted it, that he gave him the power to turn off the game and shut it off and do the right thing. And then that also ties in with my comparison. So in my book, I like to compare the real world and the Oasis. And then in the real world, like I said, that's where they eat and sleep. But then that shouldn't be the only thing in the real world, because the Oasis is just a video game. So they should go out and live their life.
So interact with people?
Yeah.
How do you feel about the Oasis?
I think when I was reading it, I thought it was the coolest thing, because all the stories and you can be whoever you want to be. But then when towards the end of the book, when he said that the game is just a game. At the end of the day, it's just a game. Then I really thought about it. I was that has a really deep meaning to it. And that technology is taking over our world, and we have to go outside and just live,
Yeah. So you like the book, huh?
Oh, I really like the book.
Yeah.
Looks it's really good.
How about you, Colin? Did you like the book?
I mean, it's kind of hard to read, just switching between two perspectives, but I really like the book. I really like Day's perspective. I just don't know why. It's just really cool to see how such a poor kid is so smart.
So it's kind of weird reading two different.
Well, yeah, it is.
perspectives, right?
It's kind of weird because your brain kind of switches back and forth between the two perspectives, but you kind of get the hang of it as you go through the book. Yeah.
Cole, what was your is there anything you can compare within your book?
Within my book, not really. There's the only thing I can compare is that each story has a crazy ending. You know how I was talking about it's hard to believe because the crazier it got. Each story is crazy in its own way. You can't believe that happens to a real human being just like us.
So you said your book's about the army. So after reading it, do you think you're ever interested in joining the army?
Heck no, man. Heck no. I'm not messing with it. Did you like the ending of the book?
My ending, I don't like cliffhangers or leaving stories with questions for the ending, but I like the question. So with what did you see? It makes you think about it, and makes you think about what her perspective was. Because throughout the book, she wants him to succeed and live a happy life. But all of a sudden, when they win the case, it's like
whatever.
Yeah, it's like whatever.
So like, why?
But I do like the ending for that though, because I just been thinking about it the last couple of days.
So why do you think the author like titled it The Monster?
That's a good question, Paulo. Why is it called Monster? Well, throughout the book and throughout the trials, the prosecutor keeps referring to Steve as a monster, like as if he did it and he's the reason for the owner's death. And even though he knows he didn't do the murder, it's making him think he did. Like, did I actually do it? Did I really do this? Because he writes in his journals in between trials like monster, like as if he really is one.
So what's so magic about your book besides the 4 elephants?
So what's magic about my book is that there's a bunch of wizards, and it's like about like a bunch of wizardry, and it's a fantasy book, so you know.
Fantasy.
If you could choose like one person to be like, what's that guy's name in your book?
If I could,
Right?
Two Flower.
Two Flower.
Yeah.
You could choose somebody to be Two Flower. Who would it be?
Two Sunflower.
Two Flower is not really like the main guy, so I'd choose. If I could choose somebody to be Rincewind, it'd be Morgan Freeman. You know.
Why do you say that?
Because I like Morgan Freeman's voice.
I can smell you.
Morgan Freeman, you know, he could be like a tourist guide, you know. I can see him going through all the action and adventure.
Do you have like a comparison in your book?
I would compare my book like to the real world. I mean, my book is fantasy, so obviously like can't compare to fantasy. But you know, like the 4 turtles, you know, like, I would not compare to anything on Earth or whatever. I mean, the 4 elephants would not compare to the planet of Earth. You know, everything in this book is supernatural, and it just like it's like a good read because it helps us like, you know, like spark creativity into our minds versus what we do in everyday life.
Man, well, I gotta dip up out of here. I got class. So,
3rd period.
so thank you guys. We should do this more often.
For sure.
For sure.
I'll see you guys.
Do it again.
You were the clock that was ticking in my home. Change my state of mind.
Ladies and
Love
gentlemen,
so hard to find.
we got it.
Change